So, what is the key to a happy marriage? So many of us struggle with finding peace and happiness in our marriage. And I believe that the big mistake we're making is that we're looking for a partner that's going to make us happy. Take a look at what Jordan Peterson has to say on this fascinating topic.
You want someone, I think, in a relationship that you can spar with. And it's partly because you have hard problems to solve. And if the person that you're with isn't willing to put forward their opinion, then you only have half the cognitive power that you would otherwise have. And hopefully you find someone who's interestingly different from you, like not so different that you can't communicate, and you have to be careful of that, but interestingly different, and then hopefully they have the ability and the will to express their opinion, and then, well, then it's, then your interest stays heightened, and there has to be that tension in a relationship. People think, well, I want to get along perfectly with my partner. It's like, no, you probably don't. You just get bored, and then you go looking for trouble. And so you want a little bit of trouble in the relationship, and a little bit of mystery, and a little bit of combativeness, and the ability to exchange opinions forthrightly. And I trust her, which is a huge element. I mean, when we finally did decide to get together permanently, we were both in our later 20s. And, one of the things that I had learned by that point and insisted to her about was that we had to tell each other the truth. And she took to that wholeheartedly, and for better and for worse, because truths can be harsh.
Does that include, does this outfit make me look fat?
Yeah, well, the truthful answer to that is I don't answer questions that are likely to get me in trouble. Yeah, so.
I have a son who will answer honestly, and it's infuriating. But then I realized if you want the truth, talk to Tamara. She'll tell you.
Well, that's the thing. It's useful to know.
The truth is empowering. Truth tellers are charismatic, and actually both my sons are brutally honest, which is disconcerting.
Yeah.
But I can see that it's made them very formidable, and because of people trust them and the friendships, and just it gives them and you've written a lot about this.
Well, if I tell my wife that she looks good in an outfit, she knows that I mean it.
Yeah.
And so there's some utility in that.
And then if you're silent and say, I don't answer questions, that she goes and changes
knows
it.
Well, sometimes, she'll say, do you like this? And I'll tell her that I don't. And that doesn't necessarily make her happy in the moment.
Right.
But if I do say I like it, she knows that I mean it. And, I actually like her sense of style a lot. So it turns out that 90% of the time it's pretty easy for me to say, look, I think you look great, and mean it. Mm-hmm. And, she's a fairly harsh standard bearer too. Like she's insisted that I stay in whatever reasonable physical shape I happen to be in. That was something that she's very demanding of. And I would say that it's the same from my side. And we've been good at negotiating, which is, what do you want from a partner fundamentally? What do you want and need? I mean, the first thing is that, well, hopefully, like I said, you're blessed with the fact that you find each other attractive. And I think it's very difficult for the relationship to begin or proceed or sustain itself without that. But having that, then what do you want? Well, you want someone that you can trust. You want someone that you can build a view of the future with. And you want someone that you can negotiate with. And that's very hard to negotiate with people because they have to tell you what they think. They have to know what they want or figure it out. They have to tell you what they want. They have to be satisfied when they get what they want, which is also a very difficult thing to manage. And you have to continually update that because your life goes through different stages. And
your attraction wanes, as we all know at our stage of life, not fatally necessarily.
Speak for yourself.
but you will go. I mean, you will not be 25 forever. So that has to be renegotiated.
Yeah, well, and you have to work at that too,
right.
And that's something that people also don't understand because they tend to think that, well, that all romantic interaction should be spontaneous. It's like, well, if that's your theory, then you might as well just give up right now if you're going to get married, because that, like, the only reason you can think that is because you don't have enough responsibility to make romantic entanglement virtually impossible. And what happens when you're married, especially when you have little kids, is that, and you both have a job, let's say, is you're so busy that the probability that you're going to find time for spontaneous mutual interaction decreases to zero. And so if that's what you're hoping for, then you're never going to have it. And so what you have to do is you have to make time for each other. And, you know, if you're dating, when you're establishing a relationship, well, you put some effort into it. You know, you decide that you're going to go out for dinner, and you dress up to some degree, and, you know, you try to present yourself to each other in some halfway mutually acceptable manner. And you hope that there's going to be a positive consequence of that, that you're going to find each other attractive. But then people somehow think that once they're married, that the same amount of effort isn't necessary, and that's wrong. I would say more effort is necessary on the same front, and you have to think it through. It's like, you know, if you don't want to be bitter about the intimate element of your relationship, how much time do you have to spend together each week? And my rule of thumb, sort of derived from clinical observations, is that you need to spend 90 minutes a week with your partner talking. And that means you're telling each other about your life and staying in touch, you know, so that you each know what the other is up to. And you're discussing what needs to be done to keep the household running smoothly. And you're laying out some mutually acceptable vision of how the next week or the next months are going to go together, right? So that keeps your narratives locked together like the strands in a rope. You need that for 90 minutes or you drift apart. And you need to spend intimate time together at least once a week, and probably more like twice. And that has to be negotiated. And if you don't negotiate it, and if you don't make it a priority, then it won't happen in all likelihood. And then, well, then you don't have it. And that's a catastrophe, because there's not that many things in life that are, you know, intrinsically, what would you say, engaging and meaningful and pleasurable and also bonding, all of that. And if you let that go, then, well, part of you dies and part of the relationship dies. And, well, then there's always the possibility of becoming attracted by alternative entanglements, which you would do if you had any spirit left, right? I mean, that's the thing, is if your relationship at home is entirely unsatisfying sexually, what are you supposed to do with that? Nothing? You're supposed to just bear it? I mean, in one way, the answer is yes, because it's your marriage. But another way is, well, what, that's all the fight you've got in you? You're going to just let the erotic element of your life die and accept everything that goes along with that, because you're not willing to cause a bit of trouble to ensure that it's maintained? And, you know, and we're not very good at thinking these things through consciously. And I mean, people are bad at negotiating, period, as far as I can tell. But they're particularly bad at negotiating things that are deeply private. How much do you want your partner to know about you anyways? It takes a lot of trust to have a real conversation about what you need and want.
So there you have it. It's a huge, huge misconception that people make when they think that my spouse is going to make me happy, that my spouse is going to solve my problems, because they then marry someone that in the first phases makes them feel good, makes up for the parts that their caretakers, their parents, that their mentors, their teachers neglected them in. But after a short time, they become very, very tired, and nobody can be a nurse for the rest of their lives. The truth is that you've got to be healthy, stable, and solid as you walk into the relationship. And now, as two healthy beings, two beings that are already happy, now you're able to experience the purpose of a marriage. You see, the Torah tells us right at the very, very beginning, when Adam and Eve were created, when Eve was created, the Torah tells us two amazing words. That Eve was created to be Ezer Kenegdoi. She was a helper opposed to him. She's his helper and she's opposed to him. Now that sounds like a paradox. It's one or the other. Either she's helping him or she's his competition. But our sages explain that the way that the spouse is your helper is because they challenge you. If you were married to a person that agrees with your every move, how could you? That's just an echo chamber. How could you ever discover a deeper depth? It's only when you're living with a person that challenges you, that has the courage and the strength to say, no, there's got to be a different way, to encourage you to dig deeper within yourself. It's then that you're able to discover a new depth that you otherwise never would have experienced. Think about it from a business perspective. Think about a business, how your business might look if you're an entrepreneur, if you never had any competitor, if you never had any competition. Now, of course, nobody likes a competitor. Nobody wants to have competition. But if you speak to a true entrepreneur, they will tell you that they love their competition, that they embrace the competition, not because they like being challenged, but because they like what it forces them to do. Having a competitor brings out the best in you. It forces you to make your product more efficient, more productive, more cash positive, and all in all, a far greater success. Something which otherwise, without competition, you never would have been forced to discover. And indeed, that's why your spouse is like your mirror. Your spouse will bring out the flaws in you, and it's not going to be pretty. Instead of shooting the messenger, listen, have the courage to hear the message, to read the message, and to be able to apply the wisdom of the message. There's an entire therapy, a school of thought of therapy called imago therapy that says that your spouse is your mirror, which means your spouse is your image, your mirror image, imago, that is there to fill in all of the gaps and all of the imperfections that you have, like a tongue and groove in a puzzle where the tongue fits exactly into the groove. Your deficiencies are complemented by your spouse, and your positive attributes match your spouse's deficiencies. So instead of blaming your spouse, instead of saying, oh, I got a lemon, I'm out of here, have the faith to recognize that it's God that put you together, that this is not just a person that you happen to like. This is your bashert. This is your destiny. That's the Hebrew word. Bashert means destiny. This is your soul mate. It's the other half of your soul. And if you can have the courage to apply this wisdom, it's then that we see our spouses as our opportunity for our greatest growth, our deepest depths, and our most amazing journey to becoming the wholesome and happiest version of ourselves that we ever dreamed possible.